Welcome to the final chapter of The Girl Who Speaks Bear, written by Sophie Anderson, illustrated by Katrin Henester, and read with permission from Usborne Publishers. For the last time. Chapter 35. Home. Hey, Yanko! Sasha punches my arm as he falls into step beside me. What's that for? I punch him back. Sasha wobbles away from me and laughs. Running away in the first place, leaving me in the forest while you sailed away on an ice floe, letting a Yaga sledge me home without you, but mostly, he punches my arm again, for not letting me help you. He looks down at my feet and smiles. How is that possible? It's a gift from the forest. I wriggle my claws and smile. Will you always have them? I don't know. I punch his shoulder again and run away. Yuri gallops after me and we make it all the way to the edge of the forest before we slip on a patch of muddy ash and skid into a meltwater puddle. Sasha catches up and Yuri sits at the bottom of the gnarly old elm while Sasha and I climb up it, until we're so covered in soot it irritates my nose and the taste fills my mouth. Mousetrap keeps complaining I'm dirtying his new winter coat, so finally we clamber down and take the forest path home. All of my favourite trees are blackened and burnt. I look up into the forest canopy and I feel its pain, like a rawness in my lungs. How long do you think it will take for the forest to recover? I sigh. I don't think it will take too long. Sasha bites his lips and follows my gaze. There's always loads of new growth in the summer. The dawn chorus rises around us and echoes Sasha's words. The birds sing about new leaves and flower buds and the promise of berries to come. Then one of them shouts, Yaga house! And a cloud of crossbills flutter away. The pounding of giant feet shakes the earth and a shadow zooms through the trees alongside us. My heart leaps at the sight of the house with the chicken legs. Come on! I shout to Sasha as I race after the house. It sprints through the trees and skids to a halt at the bottom of my garden. Yanka! Elena beams as she rushes down the porch steps. She throws her arms around my neck and squeezes me until it hurts. You're human again! Mostly. I nod, glancing down at my feet. I always loved your bare legs, Elena smiles. Do you still understand Mousetrap? She reaches up and dusts the ash off Mousetrap's coat, and to my surprise, he not only lets her, but thanks her. Yuri! Elena skips over to Yuri as he appears behind me. Then I hear her shout a greeting to Sasha too, but my gaze is drawn to the house. Vines extend from the roof and lift the lime tree gently down to the ground. Here. The lime tree creaks. I want to grow here. The vines place the tree between the fallen pines at the bottom of my garden. You're going to grow here? I ask. But I thought you wanted to be deep in the forest. Here is good. As soon as the tree roots hit the ground, they spread out, thickening and lengthening as they burrow into the earth. Branches stretch into the sky and bullfinches flutter down to the boughs and turn into brilliant green leaves. The burned trees around the lime tree glow. Ash and charcoal fall from their trunks, and their bark shines clean and new. Leaves unfurl, the smell of pine cones splaying drifts into my nose. Birds sing, animals rustle over and under the ashy soil, and I look up into the canopy and feel the forest bursting with joy. The lime tree pulses and grows larger with each breath. I like it here. The tree sighs with satisfaction. Yanka! Mamochka runs down the garden and stops still at the sight of the lime tree and the house with the chicken legs. I expect her to pale or faint or ask a million questions at once, but she just pulls me into a hug and my heart swells with love. Valentina emerges from the house's front door and waves a greeting. Mamochka waves back. Thank you again for bringing Sasha home. You're welcome. Valentina shoots me a smile. I'm glad you found your way home too, Yanka. She looks up at the roof and puts her hands on her hips. Now, house, she says sternly. We have to go back into the forest to prepare for tonight's guiding. The house's eaves droop and it puffs a small dark cloud out of its chimney, but then it nods. Come on, Elena, Valentina calls. It's time to go. Elena hugs Sasha and Yuri, then wanders over to me. She slides a hand into her apron pocket and pulls out my birth mother's arrowhead. Mousetrap left this on the porch. He must have found it after the battle with Smay and brought it back. You keep it, I smile. I couldn't. Elena shakes her head. It was your birth mother's. I want you to have it. I press it into Elena's hand, to remind you of our adventure. As if I could forget. Elena laughs. Anyway, I say, letting go of the arrowhead. It's a symbol of my past, and right now I want to focus on my future. Elena pulls me into another hug. Come and visit whenever you like. I'll keep the arrow safe, and you can have it back any time. Thank you, I nod, for everything. You too, house. I smile up at the house as Elena steps onto the porch. A spindle snaps free of the balustrade, reaches towards me and erupts with bright white blossoms. One of the flowers falls into my hands as the house straightens its legs and steps away. And within moments, the house, Elena and Valentina disappear behind a tangle of tall larches. A flash of pink on a glistening branch catches my eye. Yanka! The bullfinch calls. Come back to the forest! But Mousetrap launches himself from my shoulder and dives straight at the little bird. The bullfinch flaps away just in time, and Blackiston swoops down and catches Mousetrap in his claws. Mousetrap twists and leaps onto Blackiston's back, and they fly off between the trees, shouting something about freshwater cod. In the distance, bobbing up and down above the canopy, is the house with chicken legs, heading north, deeper into the forest. Come on. Mamochka links her arms around mine and Sasha's elbows. Let's go inside for a hot drink. As we walk towards the house, there's a knock on the kitchen window. I glance up and a smile bursts across my face at the sight of Anatoly, in our kitchen. He's a man, with soot in his beard and a twinkle in his eyes. Spittin'? He mouths the word, holding up my favourite yellow mug. Who's that? Yuri asks. Is he part of our herd too? That's Anatoly, I smile. He's part of our herd, although he isn't always strong enough to admit it. Yuri stares at me in confusion. Not everyone is born as brave as you. I ruffle the woolly fur around Yuri's neck. It can take a lot of strength to admit you need a herd. My muscles relax as I let Mamochka sweep me into the warmth and smells of home. We drink spittin' and take turns telling stories by the fire, some of them with more truth than others. Anatoly and Mamochka sit close together, with wide smiles and bright eyes, and although Anatoly flushes pink when he smiles, he doesn't always look down. Sometimes he looks at Mamochka, and sometimes he looks at me. I see the bear glistening in his eyes, and I wonder how long he'll stay. But I know we belong together, so even if he leaves, he'll come home again. When the sun is high in the sky, but we're all yawning with tiredness, I walk Sasha to the door and step outside to say goodbye. Cool for you tomorrow? He asks. I smile and nod. We could go to the village to help with the clean-up and repairs. That would be good. Sasha waves as he runs down the garden. He stops to stroke Anatoly's dogs, who are settled into the shelter, and Yuri, who is lying in the shade beneath the lime tree. He glances back at me and smiles. While you were in the forest, did you find out who you were? I look down at my feet and smile. I'm Yanka the bear. Same as before. I could have told you that. Sasha laughs and waves again as he wanders away. I hesitate before I go inside, to be near the forest a few moments longer. The treetops rustle and the wind whispers secrets. I turn my head to the sound, wondering what other stories from my past die in the forest. My heart races and my toes twitch, but then I turn and open the door, because more important than the stories of my past are the stories of my future. And those, with a little help from my family and friends, I can write for myself. Now comes the epilogue, which is a bit at the end of a story, which kind of tells you what happens in the future.
So basically,
I climb the blue mountain slowly. The summer sun is high in the sky. The rocks are warm and the air is alive with the hum of insects and the scents of pollen. Vibrations run into the soles of my bare feet. Grass is swaying, crickets jumping, and rabbits burrowing into soft soil. I walked here through the forest, with Mamochka and Anatoly by my side, but they've stayed at the bottom of the mountain, to picnic by the river. Mamochka said I could wander up to the bear cave alone. She doesn't worry so much these days. She knows I'll always come home. I find my grandmother sitting on the ledge in front of her cave, her eyes half closed against the light. Sunbeams play in her thick brown fur, and the forest, 1,000 shades of brilliant green, spreads out before her. In the distance, the fiery volcano glows emerald with new foliage, and white fluffy clouds gently drift across its peak. My grandmother grunts, a deep, peaceful greeting. I sit and lean into her sun-warmed fur, and the massive mound of her body curves around my back. "It's good to have you home," she murmurs. "I missed you." I slide my fingers through the fur of her neck and rest my head on her chest. The sound of her heart beating is as familiar as my own, and her scent of earth and moss, berries and pine nuts makes me feel safe. I missed you too. We sit together as the sun slowly sinks through the sky. I tell my grandmother about my life in the village, how the garden I planted with Mamochka is now bursting with colour, and the lime tree is alive with bullfinch chicks, all hiding from Mousetrap's hunts. I tell her how me and Sasha built a shelter for Yuri and made a dugout canoe together, and how I've been swimming in the river with Polina, and I tell her how all the villagers worked together to carve and paint the new village hall roof. My grandmother tells me about the life in the forest, about the politics of the wolves, and all the new cubs, kits, pups, fawns, and boarlets born this year. She tells me how the river has shifted shape and made new pools and curves to fish in, and she even tells me a story about my birth mother, Nastasia, and another from her past, when she was a young woman named Anya, living in a castle with a golden domed roof. "Isn't this beautiful?" My grandmother smiles as the sun begins to set in the distance. I nod, rise to my feet and stretch. It's time for me to go. A breeze flows up from the bottom of the mountain, carrying the sounds of human voices. It's Anatoly telling Mamochka a story about a flying ship. She's laughing, asking if he'll take her for a ride in it. My gaze drifts to the village in the south. My village. I feel its pull. It's the summer festival soon. I want to help build a stage for the festival show and race in the canoe with Sasha. And at the end of the night I want to jump into the starry waters of the great river with all the other children, and splash and laugh until the sun rises. Mousetrap said he would come up to the festival this year, as long as he could stay curled up around my neck, and Anatoly said he'd come and help Mamochka with her stall. "Will you visit again?" my grandmother asks. "Of course," I nod. "I'll be back before autumn." And as I walk away down the mountain towards home, my grandmother's deep rumbling snores echo after me, and I smile because I know something of our souls will always be joined together.